Hey, what's up everybody? This is Victory with another Princess Connect video. I wanted to put this video out yesterday, but had a really bad sore throat. My voice was super weird, probably still a little bit weird, but at least it doesn't hurt to talk today. So anyway, this is a video about Clan Battle, of course, since we're right in the middle of Clan Battle right now. And I touched on this topic in an earlier Clan Battle video about maximizing your damage by doing lots of trial runs, essentially. And so that's what I wanted to kind of showcase in this video, is kind of how I do it, and just how you can sort of improve your damage by trying out different teams and then getting once you know what works, getting it into a preset so that you can always have an effective team for the boss at hand. And not just one effective team, but the concept here that I want to kind of demonstrate is how to get the best damage over 3 fights rather than throwing all of your stuff into one fight and then not really caring what happens on your second and third fights against a boss. Because a lot of times, you know, you can see there's a lot of guides out there that will show you like really good teams for a boss, but generally speaking, they're going to give you one team. And so the challenge then for the rest of your fights is, okay, well, that team worked really well. Now, how do I get better than average damage on my other teams, even if they're not the optimal one? Because, of course, you can only use the same character one time outside of supports for each boss. So a lot of trial and error and, you know, some knowledge of the units as well will cut down on that. But trial and error and just experimenting and looking at the numbers in your trial runs is going to help you a lot when you're trying to figure out your second and third teams for a boss. And so that's what I'm doing here. We are in the second lap in my guild right now, and this was me yesterday fighting the Wyvern and by accident also fighting the Wild Griffin with my 3 teams that I put together for these bosses. And one of the things that surprised me as I do the testing here, hopefully you'll see this in the damage report, but one of the things that surprised me was I had a couple of units that they have very high attack power. You know, on paper they look really good. Then when I tried them in various comps, there was one team comp where they were one of the lowest damage dealers by a lot. And I think it was Erico, actually. But depending on who you partner a unit with has a big impact on it, as well as the mechanics of the boss that you're going to be going up against. And so for the Wyvern, you know, basically he hits the front with physical damage. That's kind of what he does. And I think the front 3 slots, maybe the front 2 slots, take the most damage. But that's kind of his shtick. He's pretty simple. The second lap, of course, he does a lot more damage, and he has the enrage mechanic, which makes him more dangerous as his HP goes down, or something like that. But depending on who you put in your team, they are going to either partner with each other really well or kind of poorly. And Erico, I had her on a team where I thought she was going to do very well. Then when I looked at the damage report, which I always recommend if you're doing this, don't just look at your total number. Look at your damage report to see who is underperforming. And then maybe you can think about, okay, well, maybe everybody else worked really well. Maybe if I replace this person with someone else who maybe fits better with the support that I'm using or is in a better position, I can get even better numbers on the next run. So little tweaks like that, and just paying attention to your individual damage report as well as your overall numbers for all 3 teams, and getting a number that you're happy with is what this video is all about. So basically, you're just going to see me throw a lot of stuff at the Wyvern and check the numbers, and then get teams put together in my the teams list in the characters menu. I think is very handy for clan battles because, number one, it helps you get organized and make fewer mistakes in the team selection screen when you're going to do your actual clashes. Number 2, you know, you can write it down somewhere, but I feel like it's easier to just have it in the game recorded for you. Hey, this is what I used on the last clan battle. And then, you know, if there's new bosses, you can make tweaks from that. Or if it's the same bosses, you can just go right with the same teams again. And that takes off some of that mental load of having to get your teams prepared and everything for clan battle. Also kind of helps you to know, and in the days leading up to clan battle, if you have that record of who you've been using, who you would want to start getting leveled up and get their skills up, get their equipment maxed out, so that you don't have to rush through all of that the day of clan battle. You want to be able to get ready ahead of time so that you can focus on doing the best possible damage and then getting all the farming done, since they usually do some kind of a farming event during clan battle as well. That way you can get ahead of the game and plan for the future instead of scrambling to catch up with everybody else. So, like I said, I'm basically just throwing a lot of teams at Wyvern here. On the first lap, Wyvern had died before I even started doing my attacks. Thanks, Guild. And so I didn't have any teams put together for him at all. I'd heard about the Cowrie face tank thing, but I think you saw in the first trial run that didn't work at all. I think Cowrie died within the first 15 seconds of the fight, so I decided to get rid of that plan. For me, my basic setups for Wyvern are going to be this, which Saren, Shiori, and Cowrie work really well together for damage, and then of course you just bring in June for defense break. Again, since I don't have Makoto, I'm borrowing Makoto every time. But one of the things that I'll talk about here too, this doesn't apply so much to me or to somebody else who does not have Makoto, but if you do have Makoto and Cowrie, your options for team building, I won't say that your options go up, but the number of optimal or close to optimal teams that you can make for clan battle goes up compared to everybody else because of the support swap function. In my case, I have to borrow Makoto every time because Makoto is always going to be the optimal addition to any team I make since I don't have her. If you do have her, you can put her on one of your teams with Cowrie, right? Because again, Cowrie is the best DPS, Makoto is the best defense breaker. It's just a fact. Shiori is kind of a close second, but that's how it is right now. So if you have both of them, you can put Makoto and Cowrie on one team, like a support Makoto and your Cowrie, and then on the next team you can use your Makoto and a support Cowrie and have those two teams be very similar. You can use somebody like Suzuna to fill in for Shiori. You can use some other support besides Saren. Like for example, you could do a team where you have my structure here is Makoto, June, Cowrie, Saren, and Shiori. Saren and Shiori work really well together, so that works out great. June, of course, is a pretty good defense breaker and doubles as a tank, so that's great as well. Okay, next team, I could then do Cowrie, Makoto, Mitsuki for my defense break, then some kind of tank. I guess Miyako stands in front of Cowrie, so that'd be fine. And then maybe Suzuna or Arisa if I had her, just some kind of archer who can fill in for Shiori, so that team is going to have pretty similar damage output to this one because they're both using that same basic structure of Cowrie, Makoto, an archer, a secondary defense breaker, and a tank or support. And that gives you, again, the idea is you don't just want to do great damage on one team. You want to maximize your damage across all three teams. And so that's why this testing and trial runs is so important. Again, this whole video is just to kind of show you my process for it. You can kind of see what I'm doing on the screen. And then I'm going to kind of explain some of the concepts too as we go through. See, that's pretty good damage. I'm happy with that. But now I think that ends up being the first team I use in Clash. Now my challenge is, okay, how do I put together two more teams that are going to do decent damage to this Wyvern? So I'll go ahead and save that team in my party list right away, since I want to make sure that I use it again and move on and start testing another one. And you can see, as the battle goes on, you can look at the damage report, but you can also look at, okay, are my characters surviving? Are they working well with each other? And you can get a sense for who is kind of a weak link in a team or just doesn't synergize with your other members as you do these trial runs. And once you've tried a few different things, once you have like the best combination with the units you have left, then you can move forward and be confident that you're going to get the best possible damage. In my case, the other thing that I look at is I want to make sure that I'm not using, for a boss, I'm not using the same units over and over in trial runs. I want to make sure that I have three distinct teams ready to go. And so what I'll do is once I make my teams and save them, I'll make sure to only pick units that were not on the team I just saved. I got my first team set up. Okay, none of those units are going to be in team 2. Now what's the best team I can put together with what I have left? Once I get that one put together, then I'll do testing for team 3 based on the units I have left. Now, in an extreme case, if you really have lots of options at your disposal, you might want to look at even diminishing the damage of your first team by a little bit so that you can bring up the damage of your second and third team by a lot. So like, for example, let's say you do 500,000 damage with your first team, and then you do 200,000 and 200,000. Okay, so that's going to be 900,000 damage across your 3 teams for that boss. But maybe there's a situation where, you move Shiori or Kaori down to your team 2 or your team 3. Okay, now your team 1 is only doing 400,000, but whatever team you move Shiori to suddenly perks up. They're doing 400,000 as well, or even 350,000. And then the team that you didn't change is still doing the same. You just gained 50 to 100,000 damage on that boss, even though your first team is doing less damage. That's the kind of stuff you can really only find by doing these trial runs and experiments and seeing what works for your team compositions. So you can see here another thing I'm doing is once I have a team set for Wyvern, I went ahead and did the clash, because to be honest with you, when I was doing these battles, it was the last thing I did before I went to bed, and I was pretty tired, so I was thinking, okay, I want to make sure I don't mess up and accidentally put the same person on 2 teams, then I'll be messed up when I go in to do the actual clashes, because I'll have to figure it out on the fly. That won't be good. So what I did was, once I got a team set and I knew it was a team I was going to be happy with the damage output, like this one here, I went ahead straight into the clash. And then what that will do for you is when you go to do your next round of trial runs, all of these characters will say like used in clash or something. And so it's a visual reminder to you so that you won't pick them again by mistake when you're doing more experiments for your damage. So in this case, I went ahead and did that because I kind of already knew more or less what I wanted to do with these teams. I just wasn't sure how the second and third teams were going to shake out. But I knew I wanted to use this team because it's doing 370,000, which is about as good as I can expect against Wyvern. My main goal with the other teams then is going to be just to try to keep everybody alive as long as possible. Since my unit selection is not great, that's my main goal, is keep them alive as long as possible, because that's going to be my key to maximizing my damage. And so these are just some things to keep in mind. Like, even in these final laps of clan battle, last clan battle was not that difficult. But in this one, as you progress, the bosses get more and more dangerous, and you're going to have trouble keeping your units alive. And so it may even be correct in some cases to switch out a damage dealer for a healer, because let's say you fight the boss and you do lots of damage, but then you die with 30 seconds still on the clock. Well, if you bring in a healer and your damage in that first minute goes down, but then you get to continue doing damage with your team for the last 30 seconds, your total number is probably going to be higher because you got that extra window of opportunity to do attacks with. And then there's also something that comes into play here. I didn't see this coming when I was doing it, but when I was fighting this boss, this was kind of a corner case, which is something to watch out for. Near the end of a boss's HP bar, it's even more important that your team is able to stay alive through the fight, because if you defeat a boss in clan battle, if you get the last hit on it, any time you had left, you can use that same team with that leftover time to fight the next boss. And so, again, survivability suddenly becomes pretty important in that case, because if you can take a team and they're beaten up, but everybody stayed alive, and give them 30 seconds against the next boss, that's going to be a lot more damage for you than if a couple of people fell against the first boss, and then suddenly you have a team of 3 that's going in against the second boss, because you get a heal in between. And so if your people get injured but get healed up in between the fights, again, survivability is really important in that case. And you'll see that's kind of what happened. I didn't mean for it to, but that's what happened against this Wyvern. I will go in to do my last clash against the Wyvern, and he's going to just fall in about the first minute of the fight. And I think it's because somebody else was attacking him at the same time I was, so his HP was a little lower than I expected it to be. And so that can happen. And this is one reason why coordination is important in guild battles, but also just doing the testing and knowing that your team works before you go in. Because imagine if I had gone in with just some team that I wasn't sure about, and I'd left the Wyvern with maybe 10,000 HP or something. If that had happened, that would be really bad, because somebody would have had to come in with maybe a team that didn't work so well for Wyvern, or didn't work so well for the Griffin, just to get that last 10,000 in, or didn't realize it, and we could really be hurting our overall clan's performance. But because I was able to put together a team, and again, this wasn't on purpose, but because I was doing my testing, and Wyvern and Griffin have fairly similar mechanics, I had a team that would work okay for Griffin as well, where I was able to carry over a lot of that damage into the next fight and get keep my overall numbers up. And again, the reasons for that, number one is, of course, you want your clan to rank as highly as possible. And number two, your individual damage in each fight is important because you're going to get more individual rewards if you did the bulk of the damage in a fight against a boss. So you want to rank like in top 10 if you can. Obviously, if you are the player who pays the most in your guild and you can take first spot every time, that's even better. But the little bits like that add up and just help out. Anything you can do to keep your damage high in these clan battles helps you, and it helps your whole clan as well. So another thing to look at in clan battles for maximizing damage is manual play. And I know you've probably heard about this before, but it can make a big difference in terms of what order your characters union break in, as well as a lot of characters will have a buff that will hit the other party members and help them do more damage. Or they might have a self buff where they give themselves an attack buff, and for that short window of time, they're going to be doing a lot more damage. And so you want to play on manual. You can see what I'm doing here where I play on manual, and you'll see the little stars pop up where I'm mashing one character because I want that character to use their union break as quickly as possible as soon as they have it up. For example, Makoto. If you have a bunch of characters with union breaks that do a lot of damage, you want Makoto to go first in most cases. Excuse me. You want Makoto to go first in most cases because she is going to break their defense a bunch with her union break, and then the rest of your team can use their union breaks and get about 20 to 30% extra damage on theirs. Same thing if like Eriko, she buffs her own attack. If you can use her union break while her attack is buffed and the boss's defense is debuffed, you get a huge increase in her burst damage on that union break. You know, it can add up to 10 to 20,000 damage over the course of a fight. So just in conclusion, use the trial runs, use all of the advantages you have at your disposal of manual play, trial runs, and optimize your damage across all three of your teams, and you and your clan are going to be a lot more successful in these clan battles. That's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please leave a like and a comment if you liked the video. Really appreciate it, and I do read all the comments, and have a great day. Thanks for watching.